Hi everyone, my name is Nicole and I've been wanting to make a video for a really long time. Um, what I wanted to make a video about is really my experience teaching abroad. I'm from Canada and right now I'm living in South Korea, but this video isn't about teaching and living in South Korea. It's really about teaching in London, England. I lived in London for 3.5 years, and I felt like when I first moved there, there really wasn't enough information out there for me. I mean, I looked on different blogs and I asked people who knew a friend of a friend of a friend for some helpful information, but I still felt like there wasn't enough out there, so this is why I'm making this video. So to get started, the reason I decided to teach in London in the first place is because I graduated from university and then I moved back home. I was living in my dad's basement, which was not ideal. And I just felt like I needed to explore. I needed a change. I'm the type of person who loves traveling and loves exploring. So it was so extremely important for me to have a new experience and be independent and teach somewhere else. So pretty much I want to talk about how I got started, and also there will be more videos about this because it'll be pretty long. There were a lot of changes when I was in London. So to get started, I have a friend named Ren, and she was working in London. She was working in London about a year before me, and at the time I knew she was working there, so I messaged her and I asked her what she was doing, what agency she was working with. She was doing supply teaching, and that's exactly what I wanted to do. I think, honestly, that's a great way to start when you first arrive to London if you're planning to teach, because it really gives you a sense of what schools are like in London, what the curriculum is like, what the kids are like, and just to get familiar with the tube system, the bus system. I think it's really a great way to just get started in general. So my friend Ren, she was working with a company called Engage Education, and I decided I would apply with them too. So I went through that process. It wasn't too complicated, and to get the visa, which was a tier 5 visa because I'm from Canada. I believe you can get a tier 5 visa if you're from Canada, Australia, and New Zealand. So really simple. You just need to have a certain amount of money in your account. I think it was close to $1,500. Don't quote me on that. I could be wrong. And yeah, then they have to approve you and you're set to go. So I applied with the agency and they told me, okay, once you arrive, we'll get you started. So what I decided to do, and I don't know if I recommend this to everyone, so I probably applied, how far in advance? I applied for that agency, I think it was maybe 4 to 6 months before I was leaving, and then I was in London. And once I arrived, I did not sign a lease for anyone for anywhere beforehand. So my friend Ren was so kind and she let me stay with her for the first week and a half. And I was just looking like crazy. It was actually a really stressful time because I don't know, there are two sides of this. If you are looking for a place in London, once you arrive, yes, you get to see the place, but the stressful part is you need to have a place to stay while you are looking for that apartment. So I really had to go. I remember I was visiting probably up to 5 places or houses every single day, maybe even more. I still was unfamiliar exactly where I wanted to live, so I probably should have done a little more research into that before I decided to move. But anyway, in the end, I did find an apartment, and it was in the South Ealing area, and it was probably about 2 weeks later I started I think, yeah, I started to do supply work, and it was scary, but it was like a whole new world was just open. And the reason why, well, I started with Engage Education because they're a very big teaching agency. You'll find out later on that I didn't stay with them. They only guaranteed 4 out of 5 days of work. So when I say guaranteed, that means that if there is a day where you are not called, like usually they call you first thing in the morning, if you are not called, let's say you were called 3 days in a row for work, and on the fourth day there is no work, then they will pay you. So it's really nice. Or fourth or the fifth day. So you are guaranteed for sure to get paid 4 out of 5 days. Whether or not they call you. So that was nice, but later on I found out that there are other teaching agencies that guarantee 5 out of 5 days. So that is what I did later on. But to go back to the teaching, supply work, it's not exactly easy to deal with the behavior, but it's easy in the sense that you are in and then you're out, and you know that it will be the end of the day and you won't have anything to really think about when you go home. You can sort of leave everything behind you, whereas if you do a full-time teaching job, you have, what am I going to do tomorrow? You're planning, assessment, so many more responsibilities. So yeah, I started teaching all over. It was around West London, and it was a great experience, just to get to familiar with the with with the school system. Even like certain words that I was unsure of, like instead of attendance, it's register. Instead of kindergarten, they call it reception. So it's just getting familiar with those type of things. Uh, to be honest, there were days where I was not given any plan, so I think it really helped me build up my skills to think on my feet and to sort of improvise, so that has helped me later down the road. And yeah, it was the best time of my life in terms of being able to travel like crazy. I was able to really travel whenever I wanted, because if I wanted to take a week off here and there, I could. I would just call up the agency and say, listen, I'm not going to be in the next week. I am going to, for example, Prague. And that was that. But of course, because rent is very expensive in London, I did have to work a certain amount, and every single summer I did like to save enough money so I could travel. So there are those things to take into account if you're deciding to teach in London. The agency very frequently would ask me, do you want a full-time job? Do you want this? Do you want that? And for 2 years, I said no. I said, no, I want to do the supply work. That's something that's important for me because I can have that freedom, and that's exactly what I wanted at that period of time in my life. Later on, that changed because remember, I was just on a 2-year visa. So the Tier 5 visa, I should have mentioned this before, is a 2-year visa. And after that, if you do decide to stay longer, you will have to get another type of visa, which I did. And I had to get a full-time job so I could get sponsored. But again, I'll be talking about that in another video. This is just about getting settled, moving into London, and starting off with supply work. So yeah, an average day really consisted of usually teaching math and English in the morning. You would have your 15-minute break in the morning as well, and then lunch was generally an hour, and in the afternoon is subjects more like art or science or PE. Well, PE was sometimes in the morning or the afternoon, and yeah, you were responsible to make sure behavior management was okay, make sure you knew what you were doing to some degree, and just make sure all of the kids were at least safe. In terms of listening and behavior, sometimes days were okay, sometimes days were terrible, and sometimes days were, well, few times I could say it was good. But of course, as we know, doing supply work, kids tend not to listen to you. So you really have to be firm. That's so important, just to be firm in front of the class, because if you let them take advantage of you, then they will for the entire day. So that I found very important. And usually most schools had some sort of behavior policy put into place right when you started. So either it was, a lot of the time it was some sort of positive reinforcement where they would build up to like free time on a Friday. So that really did work quite well. I always had my fingers crossed to not work in a year 6 class, because the year 6s they tended to be really tough. So I always just had my fingers crossed for anything lower than year 6. Yeah, so I did that for the first couple of years, really just did supply work. I did move to London. I remember it was April, which was kind of a strange time because their school year ends in August. So I only worked for the end of that school year, and then I decided to au pair in Spain because I didn't have enough money to travel. So I did that, and then me and my friend Ren moved into another house in a different part of London, in North London. And that is actually when I also decided to switch agencies to an agency in London called Redbox, and they were incredible, amazing. They were the best agency, and I recommend them to everyone. And we decided to work with them because they guaranteed 5 out of 5 days of work. I think there were only 2 days, or maybe even 1 day, where they didn't call me and I did get paid, and that was like party time. It was the best day ever because I was getting paid and I was in my pajamas on my couch. So just remember, if it is 5 out of 5 days guaranteed, you probably won't be in that situation where you're sitting on your couch like I was. They try and get you any type of job, teaching assistant position, any type of job they can, because of course they're paying you and that money needs to come from somewhere. And also something that I should mention is a lot of the time, if a school liked you and you liked the school, they'll call you back, so you get to become a little familiar with the kids and the school and the staff. So that happened very often where I would get called to school over and over and over, and it just worked because you are still supplied, but you are also not starting fresh every single day. I'm thinking one downside, one con I would say about teaching, doing supply teaching in London, was that it was really difficult to make friends because you're in and you're out most of the time unless you're called back to school a lot, and you can't really build that relationship with people. So I was really, really close with my housemates, and I was so lucky to have them there, and they were in the same position as me. Another thing I should mention is we ended up moving into a house through like a letting agency, well, that mainly house teachers together, called Arrive Homes. So that was really great because I was living with all teachers. There were 6 of us girls for a long time, and we just had a really fun time. And we would do activities together, go to markets, go out for meals, and even go on trips together. Like one time, me and my housemates, for example, decided, for the weekend, let's go to Latvia. So we decided to go to Latvia and go bobsledding, like completely random, but totally doable. You can do that. And we did have the freedom to do that because we were supply teaching. Yeah, it just felt like total freedom, and that was really exciting. So my next video will be more about what happened after I decided to, once my visa was expiring, what I decided to do next, and the type of visa I had to get. So that's another long story, and I'll be continuing to talk more about London. And some videos will be just about things that I did in London, places I traveled, because again, I traveled almost everywhere in Europe while I was there because I did have the opportunity to do that while I was teaching. So I hope this helped you. Sorry if it was a little scattered. This is my first YouTube video talking about this. So hopefully this is helpful to some of you, and if you have any questions, feel free to just post a message.